Okay, so we're live on Facebook and YouTube, everybody. Welcome. And we're going to put the intro on so we can allow people time to come in and so I can share out to the network. And then we're going to bring Eric Rankin, Sonic Geometry, back up here and have our second conversation with him. I'm excited about it. How's it going, everybody? Going to bring Eric Rankin up here, Sonic Geometry. I don't know if you saw the last time he was on, first time he was on, which was like in the last month. And yeah, it's on YouTube. It's on my Facebook archives. It's worth watching, but I think this will be just as good, if not better. So let me pull Eric up here and let's learn a little bit more about the science, the spirit science of sonic geometry. All right, let's see, that should do it. Let's see. Hey, Eric. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I see. I hear you.
There you go. Howdy.
What's happening? So you're jumping off one interview right into another one.
Yeah, since 2 weeks ago talking about this, not a whole lot is.
Huh? Was it 2 weeks ago? Was it 2 weeks ago?
It was maybe 3 years.
Yeah. No, I meant I know you had another one right before this one, but yeah, and I was really happy talking to Jen today because I realized, why I came into it today. I was like, oh, this is gonna be a great day. It's 4/4 and all that, and I was like,
Earth Day,
huh?
Earth
Day, yeah, and new moon, whatever all that means. But I was like, man, there's something about Eric that I align with. I can't figure out what it is. And then Jen told me you were obnoxious, so I said, oh, that's it. I'm obnoxious too.
I missed that part.
She said when she met you, she was like, this guy was like, he was obnoxious.
Oh, yeah. that was pretty mutual. We were both. Isn't it interesting? I was already doing Awakening Code Radio, calling it, I guess you could be a part of the awakened community or spiritual community. I don't really use that vernacular very often. And so was she. She had a lot of outreach with her Fibro TV. And, I think she's performed a lot as far as helping people on their path. But we both were kind of repelled by each other.
So there's many ways up the mountain, right? So
yeah, that's right.
I went and explored, so after we did the last show, I think there's I think I watched 2 full videos, which I don't normally do because I can't seem to be, I don't know, call it ADHD or whatever, I don't know, but they were both about a half an hour long.
Yeah,
but they were great. And I'm like, this is like a whole new, like, I'm looking around. I see people like making sacred geometry or making like meta mandalas and just different things, but I don't see anybody actually talking about this. Is there anybody else that talks about this stuff like you do?
Well, Drunvalo Melchizedek is sort of the godfather of going deeper down the sonic geometry rabbit. And it is, in my mind, this, if you remember the movie Contact, do you remember that? And there's the scientist, Van Hatten, or, he was the rich guy funding the building of the machines and getting Jodie Foster's character involved with that. And he brings her onto his plane because they had been receiving these informative streams of information, 60,000 pages of information that they could see was something guarding the machine, but they could sense of it. And she said, we can't, he goes, you don't have the primer yet. And she goes, well, nothing makes sense. The registration marks don't line up and all this information. He goes, they do if you think dimensionally. We're thinking human species. We kind of want to put things in flat space, hard edges, hard angles. And he was thinking, if you want to think like an extraterrestrial and communicate like an extraterrestrial, you would have to be thinking in multiple planes on multiples. And because we're multifaceted beings ourselves. And that makes total sense to me. When we look at sacred geometry, the flower of life that we're all familiar with, I think what we're really looking at is a primer to a much more expansive field of research and work. And I, through my videos, I am not a guy that hardly spent any time in college, certainly not for math. I failed geometry in high school, and that was pretty much the end of it for me. So that I'm known as this guy, sacred geometry guy, or sonic geometry, is pretty funny. But I've had college professors and the like in my apartment looking at some of my models and going, where'd you get your degree? And stuff like, I never did. But there is something coming through to the collective. And we're, I think, familiar now. This would be one petal of the flower of life. And that, you might be thinking of that even right now. I'm holding up a flat piece of cardboard, but I'm not. I'm holding up something that is actually dimensional. Yeah. And you can look at it, even from this angle, you might think, oh, he's holding a triangle like this, or a tetrahedron. Here's a tetrahedron. Maybe what this was. But no, this is something that could be revolutionary in our study of the geometric field universe, which is what physicists are talking about now, that the background field of our universe is two things. It's consciousness or awareness or intelligence, however you want to put that, and it is geometry. It's like conscious geometry. And right now, we don't have a good model to represent conscious geometry. We don't have a fluid, flowy, curvy like Alan Watts. He's a hero of mine in his research that he did mostly in the 60s. And he goes, what's our obsession? What is humanity's obsession with straight lines? Let's iron this out. Let's get this straight between us. When everything around us is curvy, water, hills, clouds, us, trees, everything is curvy. Why are we so just going down this road where everything has to be strictly straight? Well, the mystery lies in the curve. There's another famous researcher that dabbled in physics that was around Nikola Tesla's time, Walter Russell. And one of his most famous quotes was, all direction is curved and all motion is spiral. If all direction is curved and all motion is spiral, then all of these geometric models, these fractals that we've been making from this, the small geometric solid is a tetrahedron, then it is not the truth of what the universe looks like. If the universe is built on this and builds a core pattern of something like this, that supports, and let me see if I can show you here. So we know what the flower of life is, a single petal. And if I hold this right, I should be able to hold it to where you see what looks like almost a flat flower of life. Yeah. Right. Very beginning of it, but it is not flat. It has these 6-petaled flowers in it. And I can rotate it around and show you 4 different versions of that 6-petaled flower. And it creates this incredible geometry that we call vector equilibrium geometry. And it expands a little bit, and I hold it just right, you can see sacred geometry in there. You can more or less see
Yes.
the seed of life in there, and yet you could also see a cube, or you can see a hexagon, or you can see this amazing shape that Buckminster Fuller called the vector equilibrium. It's not so easy to see there, but there it is. So it's made up of triangles and squares, 8 triangles, 6 squares, and that's exactly what this form is. 8 triangles. You can see the triangle shape here.
Yeah.
The square there. But what it really is 4 planes of this same, it looks flat, if I hold it just right,
Yeah.
it's 4 planes of that sacred geometry. And that's when our geometric model, modeled on feminine curvy geometry, starts to take form. And it's beautiful because it overlaps.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when you were talking about the straight lines. I remember Morgan and I were laying on the beach one day, and she goes, "Do you ever notice that all the men are like straight lines and all the women are curvy?" You know, like energetically is what she was talking about, obviously. But yeah, and then so you're explaining that to me, and the first thing I was starting to get a grasp of, and then you hit me with the second part, which I'll tell you, and I was like, oh, I got a long way to go. But one is that we look at everything figuratively and literally on a flat surface, you know. And so I'm sitting there going, wow, that's like you know, like this information that you have is like a book, but it's not in writing. It's in some other form of you know, communication. Because I'm thinking, well, you know, as you're talking, I'm like, okay, so that's why me and most other people, you know, take, say, a dimensional experience or whatever it is and try to explain it. It's like taking we're doing it backwards. Like, you know, you're saying it's all this multidimensional stuff, and then it's coming into us. We are that same multidimensional stuff, but we're still computing in a, you know, straight line, flat
2D
on a piece of paper form.
Yeah.
How do we, is there a way that we can start to absorb, to your knowledge, absorb the, like, for instance, like these models that you have built? Is there a way we can absorb that without having to you know, transpose it into, like, you know, the conventional ways that we're used to?
Well, I think we're getting there. I think that that you and I are having this conversation about this would not have been a conversation even 10 years ago. People would have stopped at flatline sacred geometry, which is what sacred geometry, what we call this flower of life, has been with us for thousands of years. I mean, we see examples of it in old Roman tiles, or in Abydos, Temple of Abydos in Egypt, or Japan, the Fu dogs with their paws resting on the sphere with sacred geometry. It's been haunting, following the human experience for literally thousands of years. But now I think we're opening up into this multidimensionality. When we talk about forms like this, we're incorporating other aspects of what geometry is. It's not just straight line. It's not just curve. It can be straight curve. Literally, when you see this, it depends on what you focus on. You could look at it very closely and see that there's no straight lines anywhere. It's all a curve. And yet you pull back and you can see that there's indeed a straight line going across here and would go across forever.
Yeah.
All of these things would go into infinity. So once we start wrapping our head around that, I think it gets easier to hold in our consciousness as we meditate. Certainly people, and I'm not going to sound like I'm endorsing this, but certainly people that have done plant medicine journeys, whether it's ayahuasca or psilocybin mushroom, people like Alex Gray, who's ended up painting a visual representation of what he saw when he was doing a plant medicine journey. People start talking about seeing the grid, seeing multi-layer, the dimensionality of it. I think we will get to a point as a species on this planet where, whether it's through our pineal gland or something else triggers in our brain or research, but something will get us into this field of understanding and knowing and eventually seeing this fluid grid pattern. Maybe we have to look at it first outside of ourselves to imprint what it kind of looks like. And then when we go to sleep at night or meditate or lucidly dream, or some people doing plant medicine journeys, we'll see this grid. And it's like, well, what's the payoff just from seeing it? Well, it's like, what is ever the payoff when you're just starting to do the research? You don't know.
Yeah.
What is the payoff of chemistry? But once you see molecular bonding and atomic structure, you end up being able to manipulate it and make things out of it. We're just in the very, very, very beginning stages of understanding how significant curvilinear sacred geometry in multiple dimensions is.
Yeah. Well, even like the Platonic solids, you know, and I'm not that well versed, I'll tell you straight up, in sacred geometry. But even when you showed that, and you were saying that and you're right, I can feel it. You know that it's all curvature, right? Like that gentleman.
I'm going to move this a little bit. I'm going to show you a model that you did not see last time.
Okay.
So there's an artist down in Southern California, Michael Evans, and he's on the Spirit Science movies. The Spirit Science movie actually ends with his work, calling it the God particle, but it is this form. It is all this form that Michael Evans, the artist, calls a trion ray. He went on to imagine all the Platonic solids like you're talking about. In Platonic solids, there's 5 primary ones. It means you use the same geometric 2D form to build a solid, but it has to be the same form. So it has to be all triangles, or it has to be all squares, which would be a cube, or it has to be all pentagons, which would build the dodecahedron, but it has to be the same forms. So what Michael Evans did, as soon as he saw the significance of this trion ray, he was like, what if you imagined regular straight line geometry, but in curvilinear form? So I don't know if you can see this, but everything is like a
yes, I can see it. And this is
model.
Yes. And that's where my question was, because you know, I was happy with myself because I got that first little intel in, and then you showed that tetrahedron, and I said, well, wait a minute, that means that even the visuals that we're used to with the Platonic solids aren't even accurate.
Right. So he calls this a tetrene, and it's like an inward breathing. You can see this is a slope like this. It's almost like this. The tetrahedron is breathing in, and you have one called the tetrex, where then the angles are all outward like this, but it's still a tetrahedral design. Yes. So you make all of your, you know, straight line geometry breathing models of geometry when you use fundamentally this shape.
Well, that's what it seems like to me, is when you bring in the curves, it's not a stationary object. And I know nothing is, but I mean, to look at a Platonic solid looks like a solid, you know, but looking at that and then just looking at that other model, it's almost like it's breathing.
Right. Well, and when you see this model, let's go back to the tetrahedral model. This would be the holy grail of our fractal universe, as far as most physicists and mathematicians and engineers would talk about. It doesn't get any smaller than this. You can't create a straight line containment structure smaller than a tetrahedron. So when we start talking about, well, if the universe is fractaling and out, must be using this in some capacity. But this does not offer shared information. This is items touching each other and somehow in a crystalline, magical way, knowing what to do with each other. But as soon as you take this shape and you imagine spheres overlapping, so if this was flat, we would have a circle over here and a circle over here. This intersection point would be called the vesica Pisces. And that's the overlap. Well, now all of these are dimensional vesica Pisces. Each one of these little shapes would be that. But what's amazing about it is they're overlapping. They're sharing space.
Right.
They're not just butting up against each other. Buckminster Fuller's model was built on spheres touching each other. They just touch, as if there's some sort of magic bonding in, which like magnets can just touch, but energetically what's really happening is they're overlapping each other energetically.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about a true connected universe model, because the smallest, you could imagine this as an atom, you could imagine this as subatomic, you could imagine it as a molecule, but the geometry that holds the framework of everything could very much look like something like this. And the beauty of it is it can twist, it could compress because of the curved shape, it can elongate. I mean, this allows so much more than we can almost wrap our minds around. And it's not just because it's curvilinear, it's because it's overlapping energies. Like if you and I were to touch hands, touch our fingers together, this is your finger and this is mine, and you look at this intersection, this touch moment between the two of us, you would not be able to isolate the atoms of where I ended and where you began.
Wow.
They're overlapping. It's truly, we're living in a connected universe, and we're starting to see the geometric modeling suggesting what that connected universe might look like.
And it's almost like whether it's the two fingers or that model that you just had up, like those points where the spear is, the sphere, it's almost like that's a portal. Like that's a new, something, another, could go right off of it. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. That's a beautiful thing about this model, and that's really intuitive that you would say that. So what is very hard, I've built this shape numerous times in numerous scales out of numerous materials, and I have it all around me, say for the last 5 years. I've had these shapes around me, and I see deeper into them all the time.
Right.
But you just said, so what you probably can't see. So let's take this model now. It might not make sense, but this is Buckminster Fuller's vector equilibrium. It's created out of 12 spheres, all touching a center one. So there's actually 13 balls or spheres to make up this shape that Buckminster Fuller called the geometry of the universe, but he imagined it more straight line. Now, instead of 12 straight lines or 12 balls, we have these 12 pulse points.
Yeah.
So here's 0 point, pulse point. It goes off and tapers into another 0 point, pulse point. And what it does, each one of these little balls in this more complicated shape is building another one of this exact thing.
That's what I was, yeah.
Every single one of these little points is trying to build this exact shape over and over and over again, replicating, mirroring, and expanding out. So this is infinitely contracting into infinite smallness and infinitely expanding into infinite outward growth. This is the miracle. And when you said, it's almost like, so imagine a timeline. So yes, there are lines in this shape. If we project from 0 point in the middle, and we can follow straight lines, so you can see these straight lines. Say we had an idea of, I'm going to make something. Here's your idea point here, your 0 point. And you follow the logical progression of, yep, I'm still on the path of making this thing. But as you're doing it, you're kind of activating and energizing all these other points in the field around it. All these other potentialities as you're working on your project. Here you met a 0 point, you hit your finger with a hammer while you're working on building something, and you had to go have your thumb amputated and you can't build any things anymore. So this point became a whole new trajectory, but it's still building, it's functioning in this grid. I call it the mother matrix because I truly believe this could be modeling the mother matrix of geometry, because it is the only one that will support curvilinear and straight line geometry both at the same time.
That's far out.
It is far out.
Now I just have a couple of, I'm getting all kinds of, because I just have an inquisitive mind. I find this really very fascinating. One of the reasons I do is because I never really, had any, I never really gave sacred geometry much thought at all.
Me neither.
But it's becoming more and more. But like, so in terms of picking up, like you said, you've been hanging around for 5 years, you look at it, you see more and more and more. I guess by the same token, I guess what I'm thinking is, because I'm thinking, how can I absorb that information? you know, because I know that information is obviously endless, because even that little model you have has probably got, you know, thousands and thousands of, you know, data points or whatever. But
Yeah.
could you sit in front of it? I guess, could you sit in front of it and just like kind of stare at it and just, you know?
I actually do. I mean, I have some turntables where this will sit with light coming through it, and it is spinning slowly, and I will see it do these incredible things that I never would have expected. I'll see it go from a beautiful version of sacred geometry, almost looking 2D, like I see the flower of life pattern, and then I'll see a hexagon, and then I'll see like a cube. At times, I don't know if I can make it look like a cube here or not. Yeah, if I
Yeah, I can see the cube. Yeah.
see the square there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
thing is holding both straight line, angular, 90-degree geometry, while at the same time it's holding hexagonal, like snowflake design.
Yeah,
It's
and when you said
miraculous.
sometime you put a light on it, and I immediately saw like all different bands of colors, right? And
Oh, it
like
does.
if that were moving like that, you would see all kinds of stuff, you know?
Or the shadow of it, the shadow that projects out of this when it spins in light, it makes incredible geometric pattern on the ceiling that you get to see it lock into place and reveal a certain geometric matrix, and then it spins and shows you something else, and then it looks kind of chaotic and comes back together. I mean, it's amazing, but it's a beautiful model to wrap your head around, that because I mean, how many people have heard in the spiritual community, or even not, we're all connected. You know, we want to believe that we're all connected. Well, models like this are starting to give us proof of how we are all connected, because these are overlapping geometric forms on curve. So now something like an atomic model is building ever larger scale all the way up to the astrological model. We have a problem in physics right now that quantum physics, where all the exciting stuff happens, does not communicate with astro level physics. Something, a model like this, because in our mind it says, well, like small things should be made of, you know, be making up the bigger things, you know, a natural progression of building blocks that does not exist in physics at this moment. So we are on a truly a grail search right now of finding what is the geometric model. If the universe is geometric, what does that model look like? And I would, for everything I would on that.
Like, what's the base component? That's that what's the petal of the true petal of the flower of life? Somebody had a question. And let me just pull it back up. Carrie Lake, thanks, Carrie. She says,
hi, Carrie.
You know, Carrie, she's very cool. She says, please ask Eric about the twist of the Tryon RE.
Tryon, that is the Tryon Ray.
Okay.
So Michael Evans, the artist I was telling you about, he primarily envisions his Tryon Ray like this, a fairly static form, even as curvy and beautiful as it is. He did have a model, kind of a wireframe model that he could compress. You could push it and it would get very fat. He could stretch it out. He could twist it. But as far as seeing artwork that I've ever seen, 2D, showing how these could twist, was Carrie Lake's. She did a beautiful piece of art where it's almost like wringing it. If this is all fluid, like made from pipe cleaners, you could wring it and see, not only do we have this amazing, beautiful organic shape, but it can twist and turn and breathe, flex. That's, I think, hugely significant as well in our view of how we think the universe works. This whole universe, as big as it is, if you had the two hands of God, you know, picture this thing as big as a galaxy, the framework of it. But because all of these things are curved, you could just squish it together like a sandwich, or you could squish it together like a snake when it's all curved like this. That's the beauty of it. And Carrie, I think, was a person, you're talking about how do we see this? Somehow she saw that in her mind. What if it did twist? And that twist is really significant. There is an incredible video that I would encourage you and your fans to watch, and it's called The Helical Heart. I think it's helical, Helical. And recent research, this is only going back like 10 years. I don't think we know what the heart looks like. We know it doesn't literally look like, the heart that everybody holds up like that. We know what a heart kind of looks like, and it's a big muscle with these valves off of it. But really what the heart looks like, those muscles can be filleted out very easily without even cutting the muscle. It's just like little tendon lines. You can open a heart up, and it's a muscle about, I don't know, 14 inches long, and it's two, and they intertwined around each other, and they are two counter-rotating muscles that are like wringing a wash rag, and that's what's pumping through your body, is this twist, this
wow,
boom,
like
boom.
a physical representation of energy.
Yes, it's like, it's unbelievable, and it makes so much sense when you just think, how does a heart work? Does it just like magically, expand and contract? But when you see it as twisting around each other, and that twist is creating the pump, it makes so much sense. And it's a beautiful, they did an MRI of a cow's heart, and you can see these counter rotating patterns, almost like the beginning of a pine cone pattern, like the pineal counter rotation spin. It's fascinating what we're learning in this moment, in very recent history.
Wow. And so it's like that whole thing about the connectivity, because I think that is, well, we're all, on the learning curve of
Absolutely.
how deep does that go? But it's like that twist that you're talking about. Like it's almost like when you get down to, hey, everything you do affects everything, and like you're the twist. Like,
Yes.
so kind of like, be aware, because I mean that goes into infinitum, doesn't it? I mean, it just never stops.
Right. And just think that every little nodal point could just be a thought, that there's this geometry of the universe, and what puts it into motion, what's the creative process is somebody having an idea. This light bulb moment comes to someone, a Thomas Edison, a Nikola Tesla, someone who's invented something incredible, but that idea ends up twisting that, providing an energetic twist to the universe, where it's actually pumping energy out in all those vectors, all those dimensions, because then it starts, when we hear the phrase thoughts are things, well, you can start to imagine a thought as a curvilinear containment field, because it's held in the field, just like everything is. We're not talking about a grid that you'll ever see. Buckminster Fuller was very clear. You're not going to go and dig deep and see this literal form looking as perfect and balanced as this. It's like a energetic construct, but it's a framework. It's a matrix that holds everything. It holds the atomic bonding that becomes what we call matter. Deep down, there is no us. There is no matter. There's breakdown, and you have these tiny little pockets, these little pieces of energy. And what does that look like? And how does it know to follow a geometry? It's because that template is there.
Yeah, and another thing you said too, which every time I think I kind of get a handle on it, then you throw something else at me. But I'm staying with you. But so like that whole thing with the twisting, right? Like it. So to me, what I'm kind of picking up is like, so that's the base component. It can actually take on. It might look like a different form, but it's actually the same form.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave you a second. Keep talking.
Yeah. But to me, that's like another level of multidimensionality. You think in terms of multiple avenues that are in that model that he made. But then when you start thinking about the fact that you twist it, it's still the same component. It's
right.
just
so here's this guy in solid form, because it's made out of cardboard. I can't physically twist it. Here's the exact same model in pipe cleaners. So it's the exact same. You can see the triangles and the squares, but it is the exact same model. Now, it's a little easier too. On this one, you see an orange ring there.
Yeah.
That orange ring. And then I can move it to where you see a green ring and a yellow ring and a pink ring. But the beauty of it, what you just said, is I could take this and twist it. I could totally collapse it.
Yeah.
If I wanted to. And it is still the exact same shape. I could collapse it to almost flat or completely flat, or I could stretch it. This exact same form, and all of its individual components are flexing around it, with it.
Wow. That would be a heck of a model. Would be like if you had a model like that and you could contort it, and then it would go back to,
Back to
just
its form. And maybe they're never looking exactly like this. Maybe there's never a moment in this shape's life
true. Yeah.
that it ever looked exactly like this, because it was constantly fluidly floating, but the matrix that holds it in place is that exact model.
Yeah, and another thing that comes to mind too, I remember like 2 years ago, I was in Houston and I was in this hotel and I walked outside and I could just for a day or two, I kept having I could see the matrix and they were all straight lines. Everything was straight lines. And then I think about some of the other experiences I've had at night, and it's like I can thinly see the outline of the straight lines. And then I can get past it sometimes. And what I see on the other side of it, it's not formless, but it's not straight lines. It's like energy blobs,
Yes.
And
totally
so
get
that makes a lot of sense that, the matrix would be constructed with, I'm not saying that it is, but that it would be the straight lines,
Right.
Almost like a overlay,
right.
or an
And
interlay.
if there, let's allow ourselves to go down a conspiracy theory road for a minute. If you were aware that there is a matrix and that could be fully explained by straight lines, this is what you could sell to the masses and go, here you go. Here's everything you're going to build your modeling on is somehow contained in this matrix, and it's going to work because it will. This matrix that holds everything. What you might want to do and keep to yourself is the beautiful model that's really running behind everything and holding this, the curvy linear model. I have to think that the Freemasons were the good guys in this story. I don't know what everybody else thinks about them. I haven't gone way down the Freemason rabbit hole, but just by keeping the significance of geometry in our field, I think, and seeing these flower petal patterns, I think there has been a trajectory of our expanding awareness happening for 6,000 years or so, at least.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Like, they were, because I mean, how do you pass that information on? Yeah. Like, how do you, what's what I was talking about at the top of the show. Like, I almost want to just get like 2 or 3 of these things, or even that base component, and just sit there in front of it and look at it.
Yeah.
Like, I know I would pick something up. I might not be able to explain it or even be conscious of, but I guarantee you that there's got to be something to it. I mean, if I look at, for instance, like last night when we connected we had some things happen. One of the things she was telling me about today was that she was able to look in her body. And I said, well, what did you see? Because the same thing had happened to me a few days earlier, and I could see the cells and different things like that. And she said, I could see a lot of different things, but I was seeing all the new geometry. And I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. But how do you explain what that means? You know what I mean? So it's like a different language altogether that we can't even begin to put our finger on it. There's no way.
We're just beginning to, you're right, not to put our finger on it. We have to see it first. We have to see the significance of it and go, hey, what's that over there? Yeah. Closer to it, then touch it, and then start to manipulate and work with it. And that's what is happening.
Yeah.
Our research groups around the world, there's a group in Japan called T-Flow that is using almost only this geometry and making incredible models based on it. And it holds everything from the double helix, of our DNA. It's incredible what this curvilinear vector equilibrium matrix brings to us. And, what will we do with it? It's too early to tell. It really is too early to tell. I think every step forward will get us closer into understanding this quantum realm, the geometric essence of all life in all dimensions, and the true interconnectedness of the universe. That if it's overlapping spheres where everything is sharing energy and polarity with everything else, we truly are living in that woo-woo, it sounds so airy-fairy and, connected universe, but it's going to be the thing that's actually true. And when you finally get that, no matter if you do anything with it yet or not, but if you just come fully aware that there is a geometric model that supports a geometric interconnected universe, I think that's the beginning first step of changing everything, because you grasp how significant your action, your thoughts, your words are in the whole scheme of everything.
Well, if you look at the energy behind our conditioning, it's all straight lines.
Yeah.
And so going back to what I was coming to me earlier, if I expose myself to what I'm looking at today and bring that into my awareness, that's going to alter at some point, because it's all energy. That's going to alter the way I'm looking at things from here out. So, I might not, for instance, like as an analogy, if I read a book, I'm reading flat pieces of paper. And if I look at the model, if I look at that reality, and then I start to look at a flat, as a book, I'm not going to see a book anymore.
That's
it's
right.
not going to look the same way.
So let's look at this. So you're looking at this from a distance away. You're like, that's a cool thing, and I'm studying it from a distance, and I can take some measurements and do this. But what happens when it's this, and it is, you are in it? You're navigating through it, and seeing this totally changes everything, where you can look in front of you, to the side of you, behind you, and see this same fractal pattern. It's exactly like what you just said, that now you are in it. You're not observing it from the outside. You are co-creating with it.
Yeah. And the interesting thing too is when you look at it that close, it looks limitless. It looks, because you can see how like those spheres, like a portal, create another one. But when you look at the inside, you wouldn't think that.
No,
it actually looks limitless as you're looking into it.
Trust me, I've spent many hours.
Yeah, I know. I'm
looking close, looking in. I've had for our second video, we had a modeler, a geometric modeler, do a pretty good job. We were on a budget, so we couldn't go crazy, but did a good job of being able to see, even though it's still flat plane in the model, to see what that looks like and almost fly through it. It's an incredible model. It really is.
So I mean, I know you've spoken at quite a few events. Contact in the Desert's one of them. Are you, and I know you talked about last time and a little bit this time about scientists and other professionals in the field of science and such that have come to your apartment and seen your stuff and where'd you go to school? Are you finding that there are more, and is there more and more acceptance even in the scientific community, say that's not traditionally going to go to an event such as Contact in the Desert? Are you finding that there are more people open to it?
Absolutely. I mean, and upper level people are doing it. Nassim Harriman would be, I don't know if you're familiar with who he is. I don't know if he's ever been on your podcast or not. I've worked on numerous think tanks with him. He's kind of a rebel physicist. He doesn't have any degree in physics, but he actually took a lot of his work and research off of Buckminster Fuller's model, off the 12 around 1 geometric sphere model, and came up with this connected universe, but applied the physics that he does know to a formula. And he believes he has come up with a formula that more or less does connect. He provides this holy grail connector between subatomic physics and astrophysics. And the academic world does not necessarily embrace people like him, but if your research is holding true, like he was getting to the gravitational mass of a proton, that is something that has not been known, and be able to expand it and shrink it, and where the mass weight of it stays constant. He's gotten very close to that, and he's getting a lot more respect. Ancient Aliens, I've been a fan of that show. I watched the guy who created that show, Eric von Daniken, he was the impetus for with writing the book Chariots of the Gods. I saw the movie when I was 15 years old. Someone had to drive me to see it. And I'm fascinated with this idea of have we been visited by extraterrestrials in our past? Well, when Ancient Aliens came on the first couple seasons, it was pretty out there. Now, if you watch it, you've got all kinds of scientists, professors from NASA, engineers that are coming onto that show because we are truly getting to this point. NASA now says it's not a matter of if, but when we are going to encounter life in another planet.
Absolutely.
Probably be first revealed by gases, that we're going to look at a planet far away and see that there's some sort of proof of existence there, society, by these gaseous compounds that would not happen just in nature by themselves. It took some sort of manipulating.
Now, you may have answered this earlier or addressed it, but is there any link or any evidence in, let's say, Sumerian or early civilizations, the ones we can go to? Is there, say, mathematics or language or what do you call them, runes or whatever? Is there any link in on the earth that kind of connects this stuff?
It's funny you mentioned Sumerian because it's not only a link, it's the moment it all happened. It's not a link, it's the link. To me, it is the smoking gun.
Yeah.
What happened in Sumeria approximately 6,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Our species, we don't know. Best research would say how we evolved, came from Africa, simian, ape-like, Neanderthalish creatures, evolving to a point, tool using, migrating. We've created a pretty well-known story that actually is comfortable with. That academia is not comfortable with something that exists out of that timeline. And we have temples, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. It's an amazing temple with incredible stonework and massive stone moving. And it's supposedly 6,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah.
Totally blows away the academic model of what we think we know about how we evolved. But we can, for the most part, we can look at the human experience archaeologically and find that most of the planets inhabitants up until about 6,000 years ago were hunter-gatherers. That's the evidence seems to support mostly that people were nomads. They had to follow clean water source. They didn't have irrigation. They weren't growing things in agriculture. They were following food source, nuts and berries and things they could eat. They were wearing very simple clothes made out of animal skins, whatever. Their housing was temporary and mobile. And then all of a sudden, in Sumeria, the ancient Sumerian, the Babylonian era, you have the world's first city full of two-story buildings, the world's first pyramidal structure, the world's first arch, wheeled and axled vehicle, written language, math system that we use to measure time and our planet and geometry today, world's first loom to weave fabric, pottery wheel to make pottery. I mean, all these things that we use, including measuring systems, which is really crazy, and people do not know that why we measure things by a circle being 360 degrees. That's a Sumerian invention. And we can read their writing called cuneiform. This is the world's first written language. We can read it. These little soft tablets, they're kind of the size of an iPad almost. We would write them when they're soft and then fire them. And there are tens of thousands of these tablets that exist that we can read. And we're like, shed some light on how you guys do this.
That's like the internet boom on meta steroids.
It is because these technologies, as far as we can see, did not exist. It wasn't the tweaking of technologies that we use today. Yeah. It was the creation, the very seed point moment of these technologies. We read their murals, and they had mythology. These early Sumerians had their mythological stories, but the stuff that they were writing about these technologies, when we read, how did you do this? Crazily, they say, we did not do this. We were visited by what beings we call the Anunnaki.
There we go.
Sky dwellers. And that word Anunnaki literally means kin of those who came from the sky. And
Yeah.
well, that's crazy, you know, and they're supposedly very tall, you know, giants and these technical abilities. Well, you can, before we created our second video, I'm like, I want to dig deeper into this Anunnaki story because it launches from there. You can go into the book of Numbers in the Holy Bible. Moses
Mm-hmm.
talking about after their 40-day journey through the desert, and they're looking out at Canaan. That's where they're going, the land of milk and honey, where all the Jews that are following Moses, and Moses sends 2 spies ahead of all of them, says, go see if this town's everything that we think it is. They come back and they said, yeah, it's going to be awesome, but the Anak are still living there. These giant beings make humans look like, what do they call them in the Bible? Grasshopper.
Nephilim.
Yeah. So we have this Anak story, or Anunnaki or Anakim story, and it's like, truly, if nothing else, I think we need to honor what the people that were alive creating this technology.
Especially because of the fact that they were the ones there when this technology came out. So obviously you have to attribute it to them, at least to their experience, and for them to be relaying that information, you've got to respect it. And then if you look at now that I'm entering the world of geometry with you, now that you've hooked me, and you think about all the first the pyramids around the world, the placement of the pyramids, the structure of the pyramids. I mean, this is like, you know, I mean, that's like insane. You know, whether even if they weren't 2,000 pounds a piece or whatever they are, the
Tons.
fact that the level of specificity, you know, in the the very minimal, if nominal, if any degree of error, you know, I mean, all those things take into account something far beyond geometry, if you ask me. I mean, it's
absolutely. I mean, what even Egyptologists now know, since I've been fascinated by the pyramids for decades, and if you talked about this extraterrestrial story, which people have talked about from day one, they would just go, that's ridiculous. You know, this was made by humans, highly skilled craftspeople, and it's a tomb for a pharaoh. Now, even Egyptologists are not saying any of that to be for sure, and especially the tomb, that it is more of a machine, device of some kind that was never a tomb. And it doesn't look like a tomb.
Is there, to your knowledge, is there some type of, I know there's a pattern in the cosmos, like they call it the web, the cosmic web, but I mean, is there any evidence of a pattern, like say in the formation and the placement in a solar system or a galaxy? Is there any type of connection there to this multidimensional flower of life petal? Anything like that?
I mean, every galaxy does. Well, Nassim kind of rocked the physics world when he proposed that everything is its own black hole event. So everything from the center of a galaxy like ours, now the conjecture is, Einstein was right, it's a black hole in the center, a 0 point. So it's like looking at one of these nodules and imagining at the center, it's the center of it. But Nassim said that everything, even down to an atom, is the same little black hole energy spinning packet sort of thing. And that's the true connector of all, is it's all little tiny black holes. So we have, on the smallest scale, an atom revealing this pattern with a black hole 0 point in the middle of it, spinning energy around it in all dimensions. And then we go out to a galaxy and see the exact same pattern with a dead center of it, a black hole with energy spinning. It's called a twist. This toroidal field spinning like an energy donut around it.
Wow. And then we go back to the question, what is God? It just got rocked right out of the room, man. That's just,
I don't admit to many people, even on my radio show, I'm not comfortable with the word channeling, but different experiences for the last 5 years, I have received information. The sonic geometry information was certainly not on my own, because I didn't know one thing about any of this when it came to me. Since then, I've had many, what I would call almost contact experiences. And in the highest level of them, when it gets fully expansive and you feel like you are going way out and reaching the limits of it, these beings have told in different types of being, in multiple different ways, we are all still on the same search. You, me, them, all of them are going, we might be better at manipulating this grid and with frequency and energy and you, but we don't know who put that grid in place.
Wow, that's crazy. I remember reading a story a couple of months ago, and it was an explorer, an adventurer, an archaeologist or something to that effect. And he had just got married, and he went to somewhere, I don't know, Africa or I don't know exactly where it was. And so there was like an opening, like a rectangular opening in front of this building, and one of the locals had told him, if you put your head up against it, then something's going to happen. So he did, and his wife ended up talking about, hey, I saw him disappear. Well, he went into, I guess, this pyramid or whatever the heck it was, and he found himself like in a command center with a couple of ETs. And he had a conversation with them, and they told him that they were like not overseeing our realm, but they were like observing our realm. And he said, well, who, and the conversation went on, and like, where did you come from? Anyway, the bottom line is they got the same kind of answer. They said, we don't know. We're still looking, right?
We're thinking of all the Pleiadians and the Arcturians and all these advanced races of extraterrestrial, multidimensional light body, possibly beings. And I feel like I've actually heard from something like that. I don't know. I don't ask, what's your name and where do you come from specifically. But when I go, this information, working with this information, it feels like it's a holy quest, like a holy grail quest. And it is. And you and I are on the same quest. We this much further than you and can manipulate energy and sound and frequency and space-time, but we still don't know source.
Wow. And is that not another example of everything has the same base component? You know what I mean?
It is.
Like, okay, so humans don't feel bad. We're all chasing our tail. It's
we're all chasing, we're all inspired to know source. I mean, we call it God here in our moment, a siren going by. Right now where we are, we've called it many different names, source or creator or God. But it's been very fascinating to me to hear from some race way more advanced and go, we're still looking ourselves. And it might be why we exist. That's the crazy thing that I've been told. It might be why we exist, because we, as you follow, I would think, a planetary species evolution, you're going to get to a point very much like ours, where you move from analog, Newtonian physics, push-pull, opposite reaction to every reaction, energy movement, into a binary world, where you start seeing that it looks like the matrix or the coding or the invisible geometry. You've gotten more advanced in your comprehension of it, but you're still not there in the execution of it. You don't know how that came to be. And I think we're in this fascinating moment. And so you follow the logic. I think what happens when we, right in the window that we're at right now, logic starts to take over. And you might call that AI. Where if you're building a car and you have access to computers and you let computers come in and go, well, a computer can spray the car, it can also do this, but now a computer can come, or a robot can come over and repair that robot with parts that another robot made. All of a sudden, it's like, well, it's way more efficient to build a car with all these machines that don't need time off and don't get sick. And, once we buy them, we don't pay them. That's following artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence eventually is going to implode under the weight, the same existential weight of what are we doing all this for?
It's like a
building. We can create an entire universe or a galaxy, but why? And we're still using materials and energetic patternings and source vibration or frequency from a source we don't fully understand. I think we represent a Hail Mary pass to go back and follow up the logic of compassion, kindness, softness, emotion, experience that AI intelligence would say that's useless information.
Yeah.
You get farther and go, no, that was actually valuable information. Love does matter. And let's create an experimental biological gooey pooping eating machine that learns more. And maybe in that process, that hero's journey, the unlikely hero of a story is us.
Yeah.
Commissioned to go out and explore and learn things for the greater good of all things. And I think many planetary species probably exist for just this reason.
Yeah. That's it. I'm going to go back and cut that soundbite out. That was perfect. Because it's funny because we, you know, I love what you said about logic, because it took it out of, for me, it took it out of its normal, you know, its normal energy, and logic is, you know, like AI, like like a finite complexity, like it gets so burdensome and so busy with all these facts, all this rationale, you know, and then you go back to this, the infinite simplicity, you know, of what you're talking about, which is
well, were you a fan of Star Trek, like The Next Generation? Did you ever watch that with
I
Data?
watched it some. Yeah.
The android. So here's an android, looks human, incredibly complex, can learn, process information, the perfect model, all knowledge, can make things, can find things, discover things, study things, deconstruct things, all these things. But if you stand there and go, and why do you exist? And all of a sudden, all that logic just goes, well, shit, I guess I don't know. You know, that's truly the mystery that I think drives the energy that drives all
makes sense.
Universe.
It makes sense. Yeah, because that's a constant motion, a constant expansion. Like you know, like if we ever get to the answer, everything goes stagnant, everything flatlines,
or
just like an EKG monitor.
Create something, or the new thing
true
emerges.
True.
You know, you get to the edge of our universe and go, holy crap. It truly is the multiverse. There's another one. Just
it's the toenail on the elephant, right? And the elephant looks like those models that you have. It's not like a regular elephant. Yeah. Man, I love talking to you. I'd love to collaborate again. I'd love to learn more. Is there anything?
I like talking. You ask really good questions. Sometimes it's information, even for myself. It gets hard to share. It gets hard to make sound simple, because to me, it's actually very elegant and simple to grasp. But the questions you ask are like the perfect questions. They're not just math, just logic. They're stretching our imagination, and that's what all of this model is I think is just a tiny little firing pin to ignite our imagination and think in this multi-dimensional way about our multiverse.
Yeah, you got me hooked, and I'm not I'm not hookable. There's only one thing that's hooked me, and I'm married to her. But no, it's very hard for me to step out, and not because I'm not open-minded, but because I can't. But this has got me. Yeah. Now I've never totally gotten the geometry thing, but now I can. I'm getting it. I can see it now.
I can see it in your eyes.
Yeah, it's a different language. It's actually more of a universal language to me, you know.
Universal language.
Yeah, because I'm all into I can get this. I'm aligning with it. I appreciate it. I'd love to do it again sometime.
We will.
Is there anything that you've done recently that you would point people to, or anything you could, if somebody like me wanted to?
It's so funny. I mean, I'm constantly talking about this. The episode that I was on Ancient Aliens is called The Immortality Machine.
Okay.
So you can find that and watch that now if you happen to have History Channel or some other way to view it.
Okay.
The next one will be called something like The Significance of Number 12.
Okay.
I'll be talking about a lot of this stuff on that show.
Right.
I've just been sharing a lot of the same information. I didn't even think we were going to be going back down the geometry. I thought we were going to be doing a COVID-19 show.
No, hell no. I'm past that part of the matrix. I'm looking way past that. But.
Well, you know, here's here's a thing that is a payoff. And when you look at this geometric model, and then you look at something, a big event like this going on, this COVID-19, a pandemic, or the way that we live our life. And I have been shown that there is neutrality amidst all this polarity and duality. Yeah. That's where the magic happens.
Yes.
So if you model like this, and you can see this curvilinear shape, like there's tons of place, and then you imagine the other one there. The artist that created this, he says, think about space between. And that's what neutrality really is the space between what we think is over here are all the people that believe one thing about this COVID experience. It's all the Illuminati pulling every puppet string you can and shutting down the world economy so they can take over. Yeah, the other people, it's like, hey, these flu strains happen and we need to be reasonable and stay indoors and follow whatever. Well, in between, in a model like this, says all things.
Yeah.
You can be neutral in the all things model. And when you talk about an all things model, then you start thinking about something that's very complex, but it was launched out of something very simple. Yeah. And that's what I would encourage people as they go forth from here, because I do think we are looking at a great opportunity for life on this planet after this pandemic moves, through time in the next month or two. Yeah. Is that we find ourselves looking around and going, wow, this has made me ask a lot of big questions about my existence, about the planet's existence, about how we've been living it, how we've been taking care of it or not. And I just think we have a huge opportunity here to move forward and become, continue our evolution, our spiritual, our consciousness, our awareness evolution is happening. This is a major spike in that right now.
Yeah.
So without going on any fear.
This could be, this could be us getting to the edge of the universe thing.
It could trigger the thought that got us to the edge of the universe out of this, running the rat race mentality of fear and lack and distrust and conquest and war and violence. If we can shift the time, we might find ourselves on the path of true understanding of how things work. Do we want to participate in that beautiful harmonic how things work system, or are we going to continue to just be the odd inharmonic piece of information in it? I don't.
Yeah, no, me either. No, we've come too far. No sense in settling for anything now.
No going back. There's no going back, and
Thanks, Eric. I hope to see you again later this year, and definitely. Sure, I'm talking about in person.
I hope so too.
And
you're in Florida, right?
Yeah, we're in Florida for now, but you know how that goes. We're just going to see what happens. But thank you so much, and I appreciate what you're doing, and I look forward to collaborating with you again. Thank you.
Peace out, everybody.
All right, man. Take care. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.